We're celebrating with David Ellefson, of course, an amazing career. The early days, of course, which has led to the Kings of Thrash and so much more with his partner in crime here, Jeff. Now, tell us, going into So Far, So Good, So what prompted that move? Chris, again, is now gone, and Jeff Young comes in, who was actually the guitar teacher of Jay from Malice, who was, I guess, your original choice.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's kind of the story. So we let Chris. Oh well, it's funny. The last thing we recorded with Gar and Chris was a really cool recording of These Boots Are Made for Walking. Film director Penelope Spheris asked us to record that for her movie Dudes, which featured John Cryer and Flea and Lee Ving. Yeah, exactly. So we recorded that, and it with Paul Lanny, who had mixed P-Cells and would then go on to record and produce the So Far So Good So What records. And I tell you, it was a great recording, and I think it's maybe on War Chest or something. It's a really, really good recording, and the band was playing great, of course, because we were on tour at that time. So that was the last recording. We finished the tour with Overkill and the Necros. We let Gar and Chris go. Chuck was the drum tech for Gar, and we realized he could play. He knew the parts. He had a good feel for the song, so he became the drummer. And you're right, Jeff, or Jay Reynolds was a good buddy of mine. Dave knew him, of course, from Malice, who were signed to Atlantic Records, and on world tours and playing in LA and whatnot. And so, it was kind of like, well, Jay's our buddy. Let's have him come in and realize pretty quickly, though, he is, bands have a certain feel and a style to what they do, right? And we, of course, had our own, and how Jay had played and what he had sort of grown up playing was not speed and thrash metal, so it was just out of his wheelhouse. And that's really as simple as you can put it, to be honest with you. And so he realizing we're under the gun, we're in the studio, he said, hey, I'm going to call my friend Jeff Young, and I can have him record some solos and teach him to be after. But once Jeff came in, and Jeff needed some, polishing up as far as his image, because he didn't walk into the studio to be the guitar player in Megadeth. He walked in to cut some solos. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you're going to show up for a gig and audition, you have your whole shtick down, whatever that is, right? So, to Jeff's defense, he just came in as the sort of session guitar player, and honestly, Dave gave him some tapes, just the segments. He didn't even hear the whole song. He just had these segments. I want you to solo from this bar to this bar. So as Jeff has told me, kind of handicapped with, it didn't really have the whole feel of the tune, there were just these pieces. And so, I think Jeff did an incredible job on it. I've always liked his guitar playing on that record. And now that we're doing Kings of Thrash together, I realize he touched pretty much every song on that record, all the acoustic bits, and Into the Lungs of Hell, In My Darkest Hour. That was all Jeff. He played a ton of guitar on that record. So, we just made the decision, look, let's just keep Jeff. Jay, thanks. You're still our buddy, but we're moving forward with Jeff. And then that's how he, got the gig.
Wow. And of course, you are playing not only material from So Far, So What, So Far, So Good, So What, but also Killing Is My Business. Now, when you're drawn from these two different, eras of the band, what brings them together?
Well, it's funny you say those two records, because those are the two we've advertised. But, the truth of it is we played almost the entirety of P-Cells as well. We had Chris Poland come out as a guest when we did our first debut shows last year. And we played the Whiskey, where we filmed and recorded that for the Best of the West live at the Whisky-a-go-go record that we put out through Cleopatra. And so it's funny how I was like, man, we really are like the 80s version of this, like these are the songs we cover. And we've touched on a couple in the 90s, like we did. We put Train of Consequences in the set. um there's a couple of others we kind of, I think, for these shows coming up that we're going to do in December at the Whiskey and out in Santa Ana, we're not going to just play Killing and So Far as those two albums, since we've already
Yeah.
done that here in America, but we're going to pick the some special cuts from those and dive into some P-Cell stuff for sure, and a couple of good deep cuts there. And there might even be another song or two from the 90s that we throw in that were just kind of these movie soundtrack deep cuts that didn't get a lot of attention on the stage, really, after the films came out. And the other thing that we started doing too was going back into some other, like I wanted to pull a cut off of No Life Till Leather, because that's still like my favorite Metallica recording, right? Is the No Life Till Leather demo,
Yeah.
because that's when I met Dave. That was my first exposure to Metallica, was that demo. So we put Jump in the Fire on there, which is a Dave song, and I love it. It's funny, it's one of the songs that I could play on guitar because it's this pentatonic riff, and I love it. It's cool. It's a deep cut. It harkens back to, since we're the Kings of Thrash, we didn't call ourselves Kings of Thrash. That we're the Kings of Thrash. The Kings of Thrash are the songs and the bands we cover, right? Those are the Kings of Thrash. And so what we even started doing was going back into the inspiration for thrash. So something like early Def Leppard, Riot, and again, that's why I wanted to pull out of No Life Till Leather song, so there's kind of, we've even gone, we've messed around with some Saxon and some of the stuff that inspired the thrash movement. So that's,
Sure.
our caliber's gotten pretty wide now, rather than just only playing these couple of Megadeth records.
Yeah, and of course I know after that Monsters of Rock show back in the day, Dave had fired Jeff Young and Chuck Baylor. So, now all of a sudden it's this revolving door, which led into Rust in Peace and everything thereafter, Countdown to Extinction. Why is it important to you to really focus on this early era? I mean, so many times we look at bands and it's those early make it or break it days that is so interesting. I mean, you look at a band like GNR, really the highlights of the set are from Appetite and Use Your Illusion. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
recorded
look,
45 years ago.
in my last few years in Megadeth, I was always really, really pushing, and at times even maybe fighting a bit to get these songs in the set. I brought up to the band and management meeting one day when the Killing Is My Business final kill was being released. I said, why don't we go out and play this one night? And then it's funny because last year that's exactly what Metallica did when they did their 40th anniversary. They went out and they do these little pop-up shows at the Metro in Chicago. I was like, I had that idea for Megadeth, 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago. I thought that would have been cool to do that, just do these little pop-up shows either at St. Vitus or, again, the Metro in Chicago is probably the only venue that's still around from the Killing Is My Business tour. And I thought it would have been so cool to go in there and play Killing top to bottom. And I wanted to get Black Friday and Liar and Mary Jane and all these deep cuts. I wanted to get these back in the set, man, because look, we stopped playing them at some point because we were playing bigger venues and they didn't translate as well. And just because a few people on Megadeth.com go, hey, play song 7, side B, album 3, that fan wants to hear it, but then you play it on the stage and you realize no one else knows this song, right? Because, the big impetus and thrust of Megadeth's popularity really started in the 90s, with MTV. And I'm talking as far as the mainstream goes, right?
Right.
But, I just thought, look, I was part of that. I wrote a lot of that stuff, especially So Far So Good So What's, and certainly, we all helped put those records together back in the day, and we were all part of the, ultimately the composing and arranging of those songs, and I just felt like, I can still write that kind of stuff. When I pick my guitar up, I can still write like So Far So Good So What, I don't, I don't just write 90s kind of stuff, right? I can go back and still pull that spirit out of those records. So for me, it was just a labor of love and just kind of a desire to do it for the fans. And granted, look, we're playing 500 seat clubs, we're not up playing 10,000 seat arenas. But that's what that band was. And I saw a great review from Phoenix when we played here back in October, and this guy really got it. He said, here are these guys playing this kind of 500-600 capacity room. This is the Crescent Ballroom. And he goes, when I'm standing there watching Kings of Thrash play, it hit me that these songs were written because that's how big the band was. That's how big Megadeth was at that time. We were playing kind of 500 to, 800 seat rooms. We weren't playing the big halls. And that's where those songs really translated the best into the mosh pits and everything that was going on. And, man, when we played the Whiskey, I mean, I don't think the Whiskey's ever seen a show like what we had there, man. The mosh pits and the frenzy and the stage diving. Everywhere are songs, no or signs, no stage diving, and there's kids just diving.
You get thrown out.
It was kill, and they didn't throw anybody out. They realized, what, fuck it, this is what it is, man. This is fucking old school thrash metal. Me and Chris Boland were standing on stage, just going, dude, it's 1986 all over again. It was just so cool. So it's been a fun journey doing this Kings of Thrash stuff.
Yeah, I know. At one point there was an overture to bring Dimebag Darrell into the band, but he wouldn't come unless Vinnie Paul came in. And now you see.
I knew Dime. I knew Dime. He was Diamond Darrell back then, and I'd met him because I was dating a girl from Fort Worth, and she knew them, and that's how we got connected. In 1988, I was down there, and we went drinking together, and I jumped up on stage the next day when they played a gig, and we played Peace Elves, and and those, they were great, man. And that was on the Power Metal record, which is, again, that to me, that's my Pantera record, it was Power Metal. Because that was when I was first introduced to them. And Dime told me, he goes, when we were at the end of the night partying, he goes, brother, Peace Cells changed my life. And I said, oh man, thanks, I appreciate it. And he tapped me on my shoulder and he looked at me, he goes, no, I want to tell you, Peace Cells changed my life. And I was like, it was a sobering moment. I was like, oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And because he was in a lot of the guitar magazines. He was coming up the ranks as, one of the new guys. And then of course, once they did, Cowboys from Hell and they got signed to a major label, then, of course it all turned a huge corner for Pantera. But, and that's why I'm so happy. I saw those guys over at, in Europe at Grass Pop, and it's just, I'm happy for Phil and Rex that they're having this second chance. I got that when I went back to Megadeth in 2010 to play Rust in Peace, man. It's like the world just celebrated. It was, that was our big moment again, to really have this celebration and doing the Big Four. So it's, it's nice to see those guys getting to have that same thing to revive the Pantera legacy right now.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to bring Dime and Vin back, but, this is the next best thing. Let's pay tribute to them.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people in that audience that never saw the band originally.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, look, whether it's forever or it's for a while, whatever, they'll figure that out. But for now, it's a great thing. It's the one thing that people probably never thought they'd ever see again. And they're great, and for Charlie and Zach to be those, I can't think of two other guys who would do the thing justice like those guys do. So it all feels good. Yeah.
And I know you're doing another band with Jeff besides your Kings of Thrash shows, and that's unannounced or unnamed as of now, but that sounds like a great collaboration that you and he have really bonded over. And you're just so prolific together. I'm sure it's going to bear a lot of fruit.
Well, we reconnected early last year. 22 is how we got really reconnected, through the making of the Nick Benza documentary that we're just finishing up now. Actually, we're hoping to have that all wrapped up by the end of the year. And really, technically, this is 40 years of Megadeth right now, from sort of June 83 when Dave and I met with Greg and started the band and named it that till, next year. is really kind of the 40 years of the origin of the band. I mean, I don't know what Megadeth's going to determine is 40 years. Maybe they'll determine it from the year Killing Is My Business came out. I don't know, but in my mind, this is 40 years. This is when it all started for us. So to have the movie coming out next year, which is really a great honorarium, and I think it tells a great story. Everybody's respected and held in high regard in that movie. And we've got some tracks that we wrote over Nick's some existing drum tracks that he had, which was very cool. So it's kind of like co-writing with Nick. And then for Jeff and I to connect, before Kings of Thrash, Jeff and I went into the studio with Mike Keller, who plays drums in the Lucid and with Raven. He let us use his place, and we sat down, and he helped us put together about 4 tracks, some arrangements of 4 songs of some existing riffs that Jeff had from back in 1988, and then some new stuff that we came up with together. So essentially Jeff and I started some original music before Kings of Thrash started. So now we're just working on that in the background, and it's moving at its own pace and its own tempo, and when it's ready, it'll be ready. Until then, we do Kings of Thrash.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to it. I know great things coming, and you got a gig, an appearance down at NAMM in January, which is great seeing them get back on schedule, and
yeah,
going to be exciting to roll out. We want to include some links below to make sure you check out the upcoming Kings of Thrash show, and of course, everything from our special guest, the one and only David Ellefson. David, thanks so much as always, man. It's good to see you, and I know till we speak again, man. Hope all is
Jay.
well with you and your family.
Thanks, buddy. See ya. Bye.
Take care.